child, and where is the statement? And it's a very sad day today. I'm so much emotional. All I hear about is the journalist, is the paramedic who was assaulted, and I don't understand. There's a mother who is traumatized, who has lost her child after going to the clinic, asking for help. She was going to read a statement, but she can't read right now. Who will read for us? I would like the statement to be read that she wrote.
Can it read as follows? I am an adult female named Nondombi Kwam. I reside at Sycamore Street, Davidton in Benoni. I make the statement freely and voluntarily in English. On Saturday, 23 December at about 7:30, I took my baby to the clinic at Mpiliseni Street near the police station in Davidton. On my arrival, I found there were 3 people in front of me. At that stage, my baby messed herself because of diarrhea. I went and fetched some cleaning equipment and cleaned the floor. After I cleaned the room, one of the nurses asked the cleaners why they allowed me to clean the room when they were present. The cleaners did not say a word and only took the mop from me and mopped the floor again. The floor was already clean at that stage. Then the nurses asked me what is the problem with the child. I told them that my child is sick and needs immediate attention. The nurses told me that they cannot help me, and they said that they do not have any drips to assist the child and that I must take the child to the hospital. They then ignored me and my sick child and started having social discussions among themselves. There were 3 or 4 nurses at the clinic. I waited for them to give me a letter of referral to the hospital and to call an ambulance to take my baby to a hospital. I waited for more than 40 minutes, and then one of the nurses told me to go and join another line of people who were waiting to be attended to. Even at that stage, none of them had even examined the baby to ascertain the condition of my sick baby. I realized that those nurses had no intention of assisting my baby. So I went to look for a private doctor, even though I didn't have any money to pay private doctors' fees. I knew I would have to find a way to obtain a loan to pay private doctors. I went to 3 doctors' rooms and found them to be closed. And when I reached the 4th one, I found it open. And he said he would charge me 330 rand so he can use a drip on my baby, as he could see that my baby was in need of rehydration. I was at this doctor's rooms for about 2 hours. I took a photo of my sick baby, and it clearly shows that her lips and her eyelids and face were swollen. This photo is available should any police or any other authority require it. I returned home because the doctor told me that the child is recovering. This doctor also did not give me any letter of referral to any hospital. I came home and my child slept. Later at night, my child became restless and started having diarrhea again. In the morning, I decided to go to the church to seek help, as I did not have any letter of referral. I was totally desperate and then went to Pastor Mboro's church. I went there so that Prophet Mboro can help me to pray for my baby and also to call an ambulance to take my baby to the hospital. I also went there because I have the fullest confidence and trust in Prophet Mboro. On my way to the church, I phoned one of the assistant church pastors and asked her to pray for the child, as my child was terribly sick. The assistant pastor told me to place my phone on my child as she prayed, and I did that until I reached the church. When I arrived at the church, I asked an usher to call the assistant pastor. She came and prayed for my child. Thereafter, Pastor Mboro saw the assistant pastor carrying the child and asked her to come to the front with my child. Pastor Mboro then prayed for my child. As he was praying, my child kept talking. Her voice was very faint. The ambulance arrived approximately 90 minutes after the first call was made. Because of the delay in the ambulance arriving, more than 50 people from the church phoned the EMS to send an ambulance to the church, as my baby was critically ill. Tabile Mbala also phoned the EMS, and she was told by the person that she spoke with that she is reporting something that is not a serious matter, as they too have children that are sick. Tabile reported this conversation to a group of us that were standing and also making calls to the EMS. Lihle Mseleku reported to us that she also phoned the EMS to ask for an ambulance to be sent to the church because there was a critically ill child that needed urgent attention. She was told by the person that she spoke with that more than 40 people had already phoned and they were under huge pressure, and that Mboro's church was not the only one requesting an ambulance. And they were getting fed up with the number of calls that were coming through about this critically ill child from Mboro's church. When the ambulance arrived at the church, the ambulance crew alighted from the ambulance and they were asked to enter the church as the critically ill child was in the church. The ambulance crew refused to enter the church and they just stood at the ambulance. They were repeatedly told that my child was in the church and they refused to move. Pastor Mboro was busy preaching on stage, and eventually he came out to find out why the EMS personnel did not want to enter the church as my child was in the church. The female paramedic then said to a lot of people that someone must bring out the child from the church as she was not going to enter that church. Pastor Mboro then decided to go back into the church to bring out my critically sick child, as the paramedics refused to go into the church. As Pastor Mboro brought out the child out of the church, I saw the female paramedic standing with her hands on her hips. I heard Pastor Mboro ask where is the stretcher to place the child on, or what should he do with the child now that he has brought her out. The female paramedic simply stood there with her hands in her pockets, and then Pastor Mboro told her to open the ambulance door so that he could place my child on a stretcher. The female paramedic was told by me and Pastor Mboro the history of the child's illness, including the efforts to get medical assistance from the clinic and the failure to receive help. The female paramedic did not say anything but just stood there. The male paramedic then went around the ambulance and he opened the door. Pastor Mboro then entered the ambulance as he was carrying my critically sick child, and then Pastor Mboro placed the child on the stretcher. He placed my child on her back with her head tilted to one side. At that stage, the child made some faint sounds and she was calling for her father, who is known as Babani. The child was whispering and crying faintly. Pastor Mboro then told paramedics to immediately attend to my child as she was really ill. Pastor Mboro then told the paramedic that my child was dehydrated and also needed oxygen. The paramedic then demanded to know who the child's mother was, and I identified myself again to her. The female paramedic then started an argument with Pastor Mboro and told him to get out of the ambulance, and the paramedic then accused me of not caring about my child. The paramedic did not do anything about helping my child. Instead, she took an oxygen cylinder and threw it on the stretcher on which my critically ill child lay. The oxygen tank bounced off the bed and it struck me on my legs. The oxygen struck me on my legs, and I still feel the pain to this day. It was during this time that Pastor Mboro told the male paramedic to help my child, as the female paramedic did not want to help. Pastor Mboro got out of the ambulance and walked towards the church. I was in the ambulance with my daughter when Pastor Mboro walked away. I shouted for him to accompany me to the hospital. At that stage, my child was still alive. The sliding door of the ambulance was opened and my child was not strapped onto the stretcher. The female paramedic, who was the driver, started the engine and began reversing the ambulance while the door was open. As she reversed, I slipped and saved myself from falling onto the ground by holding onto the door. As Pastor Mboro approached the ambulance again, the female paramedic got out and obstructed Pastor Mboro from entering the ambulance. I demanded that Pastor Mboro enter the ambulance and accompany us to the hospital. He then entered the ambulance and closed the door. The male assistant paramedic sat with us in the rear of the ambulance. We traveled for about 70 meters when the child vomited through the mouth and nose. The male paramedic told the driver to stop as he wanted to check if airflow in the child was happening. He then checked and he said that the child was no longer breathing and that they could no longer go to the hospital. At that stage, Pastor Mboro phoned the police and they took control of the whole matter. I now wish the police to investigate the case of culpable homicide against the female paramedic for causing the death of my child in the case of assault, as she assaulted me with an oxygen cylinder. It was evident to me and to others that she had absolutely no interest in providing any form of medical assistance to my child. I believe it was through her negligence that my child died. I believe that if she had acted immediately, instead of standing around the ambulance with her hands in her pockets and picking fights with church members and picking a fight with Pastor Mbongo, that she would have saved my child's life.